The silence in the penthouse cracked under the weight of those words. Adrian Blake is downstairs. Elena's stomach dropped, her hands instinctively moving to shield her belly. It was a habit she'd developed since the pregnancy began, protecting her child from a world that seemed determined to destroy her peace. Luca didn't flinch. His expression remained unreadable, though the air around him seemed to thrum with invisible electricity. He set his drink aside and rolled his sleeves to his forearms with deliberate calm, as if preparing for something inevitable. "He doesn't get past the lobby," Luca said firmly. The sweeted man nodded and stepped out to handle security, but Elena grabbed Luca's arm. "You can't just... Please, you don't understand him. Adrian won't stop until he gets what he wants." Luca's dark eyes flicked down to her hand on his sleeve. For a fleeting second, his gaze softened. Then it hardened again, sharper than steel. "Then he'll learn tonight that what he wants is no longer his to take." The words sent a chill through her, equal parts terrifying and comforting. Minutes passed like hours until the sound of raised voices drifted through the penthouse's heavy door. Adrian's fury carried even through walls, demanding, cursing, threatening. And then, somehow, he was inside. Elena gasped as Adrian burst into the living room, his face flushed, his expensive suit rumpled from the scuffle with security. His eyes landed on her immediately, filled with venomous triumph. "There you are," Adrian spat. "Hiding in some stranger's apartment like a coward. You think this changes anything? You're still mine, Elena." Elena's chest tightened, her breath coming shallow. Old memories clawed to the surface. Nights of manipulation disguised as affection, whispered promises that turned to threats the second she resisted. But before she could reply, Luca stepped between them, his presence a wall of calm authority. "She doesn't belong to you," Luca said evenly. Adrian's eyes widened, then narrowed. "And who the hell are you?" Luca didn't answer right away. He simply looked at Adrian the way a predator might examine prey, calm, patient, but unshakably certain of the outcome. Finally he spoke, his voice low but carrying weight. "I'm the man who decides when enough is enough." Adrian laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't scare me. Do you even know who I am? My lawyers will." "Lawyers?" Luca cut in smoothly, almost amused. "You think paper shields protect you here?" The sheer certainty in his tone silenced Adrian mid-sentence. For the first time, Elena saw something flicker in Adrian's expression. Hesitation. "Get out," Luca said finally, his voice sharp as glass. But Adrian's pride was too swollen to retreat. He stepped closer, pointing a finger at Elena. "You think you can run from me? You're carrying my child. That makes this my business." Elena's blood ran cold. The words hung in the air, poisonous and exposing the secret she'd tried so desperately to hide. Her heart thundered as Luca's head turned slightly, his eyes flicking to her, then back to Adrian. His expression didn't change, but the silence between them was louder than any scream. Adrian smirked, mistaking that silence for weakness. "What's wrong? Didn't know she was pregnant, did you? You're just a fool, falling for another man's leftovers." He didn't finish. In a blur, Luca's hand shot forward, gripping Adrian by the collar and slamming him back against the glass wall. The impact rattled through the penthouse, making Elena jump. "Say another word," Luca hissed, his voice deadly calm, "and it will be your last." Adrian's eyes widened, panic flashing for the first time. And Elena, shaking, terrified and breathless, realized with dawning clarity, the man she had kissed to save herself was not just dangerous. He was something far more powerful. Adrian's gasp echoed against the glass as Luca's hand tightened at his collar. The city lights behind them flickered across his pale, panicked face. For the first time since Elena had known him, Adrian wasn't in control. "Luca, please," she began, her voice trembling. She didn't want blood on the walls, not with her baby inside her. Luca's head turned slightly, his dark gaze finding hers. For a brief moment, she saw something she hadn't expected: restraint. Then his grip loosened, dropping Adrian back onto his feet. Adrian stumbled, clutching at his collar, outrage quickly replacing his fear. "You'll regret this," Adrian spat, straightening his jacket. "You have no idea who I am. I'll destroy you. I'll take her, and that child, through the courts, through the system." Luca's voice cut through like a blade. "You won't take anything. Not from her. Not ever again." The room seemed to freeze. Even Adrian hesitated, unnerved by the calm certainty dripping from Luca's words. "Security," Luca called without raising his voice. The door opened instantly. Two men in tailored suits stepped inside, their expressions cold, efficient. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. "Remove him," Luca ordered. Adrian's face twisted with fury. "Don't you dare." One guard gripped his arm. The other blocked his path. Adrian struggled, but it was useless. They dragged him toward the door like a misbehaving child. "You'll hear from my lawyers," he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "This isn't over, Elena." The door slammed, cutting off his rage. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Elena stood frozen, her breath uneven, her hands trembling at her sides. Luca turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "Are you hurt?" The question stunned her. After everything that had just happened, his first concern was her. She shook her head, though her voice faltered. "No, but you shouldn't have done that. He'll come back harder. You don't know him." "I know his type," Luca interrupted. His tone wasn't angry, but final, like the closing of a door. "Men like him survive on intimidation. They believe fear makes them untouchable." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Fear only works until someone stronger appears." Elena's throat went dry. She wanted to ask who exactly Luca was, why he had guards, why the bartender, the driver, the security team all seemed to obey him without question. But the words tangled in her chest. Instead, she whispered the truth that terrified her most. "He's right about one thing. I am pregnant." Luca's eyes darkened, though his expression didn't change. He studied her silently, and for a terrifying moment she thought he might walk away, that he'd see her as ruined, as Adrian had. But then he said, "That only makes it more important. He never comes near you again." The words were quiet, but they struck like iron. Elena's breath hitched. "Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." Luca held her gaze, his silence stretching long enough to make her heart pound. Then, with unsettling certainty, he said, "Because you deserve better. And because, whether you realize it or not, you're already under my protection." Her chest tightened, a confusing mix of fear and relief swirling inside her. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel safe. But safety had never looked like this. Danger dressed in power, wrapped in a stranger's steady voice. Before she could respond, Luca's phone buzzed on the counter. He answered with a single word in rapid Italian, his tone sharp. After a brief exchange, he hung up, his jaw tightening. "They followed you here," he said, eyes narrowing. Adrian wasn't alone. Elena's blood ran cold. Elena's heart pounded so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Luca's words echoed in her head. "They followed you here." "What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Luca's jaw was tight, his gaze sharp as he scanned the city lights beyond the glass windows. Adrian wasn't acting alone. Someone was waiting outside. "They know where you are now." A chill ran through her. If Adrian had people watching her, who were they? And what did they want? Before she could ask, Luca turned to the suited man by the door. "Double the guard detail. Lock every entrance." His voice was calm but edged with urgency. The man nodded and left quickly, speaking into a small earpiece. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, fighting the tremor in her hands. "I should leave. I can't bring this trouble into your home." "You're not leaving," Luca cut in, his tone final. "If you walk out now, you'll hand them exactly what they want." His certainty both steadied and frightened her. He wasn't just offering protection. He was taking command, as if her life had become part of something much larger than she could comprehend. The tension was thick when the sound shattered the silence, a crash from the garage below. The building's alarm system blared, echoing up the elevator shaft. Elena gasped. What was that? Luca was already moving, striding toward a panel on the wall that displayed live security feeds. On the screen, black-clad figures swarmed the underground garage, disabling cameras with practiced efficiency. Adrian's men? No, this was something else. "They're professionals," Luca muttered. "Not his usual trash. Someone bigger is backing him." Her knees weakened, panic flooding through her. "Oh my God." Luca's hand was suddenly on her shoulder, grounding her. His voice was steady, unshaken. "Listen to me. You're safe here. They'll never reach you." But before the words could fully settle, the lights flickered. The power dipped, then surged back on. Elena's heart stopped. "They're trying to cut the grid," Luca said, almost to himself. Moments later, gunfire rattled from below. Shouts followed, sharp and brutal. The security team was engaged. Elena stumbled back, pressing herself against the cool glass wall. She couldn't breathe. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was just a teacher, a woman who wanted a quiet life for her unborn child. She had no place in a world where armed men stormed luxury buildings. Yet Luca stood in the middle of the chaos, unflinching. He pulled a sleek pistol from a hidden compartment in the cabinet, checking it with practiced ease. Elena's voice broke. "Who are you?" His eyes locked on hers, steady and dark. For a heartbeat, he almost looked sorry. Then he said, "The only man keeping you alive right now." The elevator dinged. Elena's stomach dropped. Luca raised the gun, his body shifting into a stance of deadly control. The doors slid open, and 3 masked men charged forward. Everything erupted at once. Muzzle flashes lit the penthouse entryway, security men firing back as glass shattered. Elena dropped to the floor, covering her head, her screams drowned by the deafening thunder of bullets. Through it all, Luca moved with terrifying precision. Calm, calculated, unyielding. He fired twice. 2 men dropped instantly. The third lunged toward Elena. Her scream tore from her throat. But Luca was faster. The man collapsed inches from her. Luca's hand steady as smoke curled from the barrel of his gun. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Elena trembled on the floor, her tears blurring her vision. She looked up at Luca, who lowered his weapon with chilling composure. And in that moment, she knew with devastating clarity. This man wasn't just powerful. He was dangerous beyond anything she had ever imagined. The penthouse was silent again, except for the faint crackle of broken glass underfoot. Smoke hung in the air, the sharp smell of gunpowder burning her throat. Elena pressed her back against the wall, her entire body trembling. The 3 masked men lay sprawled across the polished floor. 2 were motionless. The third groaned faintly before Luca's security dragged him away. Elena's chest heaved. She wanted to scream, to run, to wake up from the nightmare, but her body refused to move. Luca holstered his gun as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His expression remained calm, untouched by the violence that had just erupted in his home. He looked like a man who had seen this before, too many times. "You're safe," he said quietly. "Safe?" Her voice cracked, raw with disbelief. "There were guns in your living room. People tried to kill us." "They tried to kill me," Luca corrected. "You were caught in the middle." Her breath hitched. "That makes it worse." He stepped closer, but she flinched. His brows furrowed, just slightly, but he didn't retreat. "You knew this could happen," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "You expected it. That's why you had security, why they listened to you like soldiers." "Who are you, Luca?" For the first time since she met him, Luca hesitated. His silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. He glanced toward the window, the city glittering below, as if the answer might be written in the skyline. Finally he said, "A man with enemies." Her laugh came out broken. "That's not an answer." "You don't need the whole truth," he replied. "Not tonight." Her anger flared, cutting through her fear. "Don't tell me what I need. I have a child to protect. Do you understand that? I can't stand here in your fortress, surrounded by dead men, and just pretend I'm safe because you said so." Luca's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might walk away, but instead he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I didn't choose this life," he said, "but it's mine to carry. And if you stay near me, it will touch you too. That's why I asked you to trust me. Not because I want control, but because I know the danger better than anyone." Her pulse hammered. His words were careful, but they revealed more than he intended. A man who didn't choose this life. A man with enemies. A man with a private army at his command. Her stomach twisted. She had kissed him to hide from her ex. She had followed him into his car, into his penthouse. And now she was standing in the center of a world she didn't understand. A world where bullets flew as easily as words. Elena swallowed hard. "If I stay, Adrian will use this against me. He'll say I put the baby in danger." Luca's eyes softened at that, a rare flicker of something vulnerable beneath the steel. "Adrian doesn't get to decide your future, or your child's." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but belief wouldn't erase the blood on the floor. Before she could respond, one of the guards returned, carrying a folder. He handed it to Luca without a word. Luca opened it, scanned the pages, then his expression hardened. He closed the file and looked at Elena, his voice like ice. "It wasn't just Adrian," he said. "Another family is involved, and they won't stop until they get what they came for. Elena's blood ran cold. Another family? What are you talking about? Luca's gaze locked onto hers, unwavering. The Mafia, he said simply. Her knees gave out, and she sank into the couch, her world collapsing around her. The word hung between them like smoke, heavy, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Mafia. Elena's breath caught, her entire body going numb. Her mind scrambled for another explanation, a misunderstanding, anything but this. But Luca's eyes didn't waver. His silence confirmed it. You? Her voice cracked. You're telling me you're in the Mafia? His jaw flexed, his hands resting at his sides with practiced control. I lead parts of it, and I'm heir to the rest. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. She gripped the edge of the couch, her heart slamming against her ribs. No, that's insane. You can't just say that like it's normal. It's not normal, he admitted quietly. It's survival, power, responsibility. Her laugh came out sharp, broken. Responsibility? You kill people in your living room and call it responsibility? His eyes darkened, but his tone stayed calm. Those men weren't here for you. They were here for me. You were only caught in it because Adrian dragged you into this world. Her stomach twisted. The baby kicked, a faint reminder of the fragile life inside her. She pressed a hand to her belly, whispering, I shouldn't be here. Luca's gaze followed the gesture, his expression flickering with something raw. For the first time, the predator's mask slipped, revealing something almost human. Fear, or maybe regret. You're right, he said softly. You shouldn't be here. But now that you are, I won't let them touch you. Tears burned her eyes. Why me? Why would you care what happens to me? You're not just anything, he cut in, his voice sharp. Then he exhaled, softer. Elena, I don't know why I let you close, but the moment you walked across that bar and asked me for help, you became mine to protect. That's how it works in my world. Her breath caught. His world. A world of men in suits with guns, of power bought with blood. A world she had no place in, and yet, somehow, she had stumbled right into its center. She shook her head, backing away. No, I can't. I won't raise my child in this. I can't be tied to. Adrian will never let you go, Luca interrupted. He will use you, your pregnancy, anything to get leverage. Do you really think the courts will protect you? Do you think hiding will work? His words cut deep because she knew he was right. Adrian had money, lawyers, connections. He would drag her through hell until she broke. But Luca was worse in a different way. He wasn't bluffing about power. He had just shown her what it looked like when a man ruled through fear and respect. Elena's chest tightened. So what? You expect me to stay here? To just accept that the father of my baby's enemy is a mafia boss who decided I belong to him? His expression hardened at the word enemy. Adrian is nothing. He betrayed me. He used you. He put his child in danger before it was even born. Men like him don't last in my world. Her breath hitched. His world. She realized then that Adrian's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was political. He hadn't just hurt her. He had crossed a man who controlled entire families. Luca stepped closer, his voice low. You can hate me for what I am, but understand this. Adrian is already finished. The only question is whether you want to stand alone or stand with me. The words sent a shiver through her because they weren't a threat. They were a promise. Before she could answer, a phone buzzed on the table. One of Luca's men answered, his face paling. He turned to Luca. Sir, Adrian just disappeared. He's gone. Elena froze, her blood running cold. The words hung in the room like a gunshot. Adrian just disappeared. Elena's blood ran cold. Disappeared? What do you mean disappeared? The guard hesitated, glancing nervously at Luca. His apartment is empty. His phone's been off since he left here. His car was abandoned downtown. No sign of him anywhere. Elena pressed a trembling hand to her chest. Adrian wasn't the type to vanish. He thrived on control, on being seen, on making her suffer in plain sight. For him to vanish meant only one thing. Something worse was coming. Luca's expression didn't change, but the room felt heavier as he absorbed the news. He didn't vanish, Luca said quietly. He's hiding, and someone's helping him. Elena's voice cracked. Helping him? Who would help him? Luca's dark gaze lifted to hers, unflinching. The same people who sent those men here tonight. Adrian sold himself to a family that wants me weakened. They'll use him until he's worthless. Her stomach churned. It wasn't just Adrian's cruelty anymore. He had tied himself to something bigger, darker. And that meant her baby's safety wasn't just at risk from an ex, it was at risk from the Mafia itself. She whispered, "He'll come for me." Luca stepped closer, his presence towering. "He already has, but next time he won't reach you." His certainty was terrifying. The way he said it, as if he could bend fate itself to his will. But Elena's fear didn't fade. If Adrian had vanished into the shadows, it meant he was planning, scheming. And when Adrian planned, people got hurt. Hours blurred together as security scrambled for information. Elena sat curled on the couch, her thoughts spiraling. Every creak of the penthouse, every vibration of her phone made her flinch. Finally, Luca approached, lowering himself into the chair opposite her. His eyes, sharp as ever, softened just slightly. "You need rest." She laughed bitterly. "How do you expect me to rest when my ex is out there plotting God knows what?" "You'll rest because you're safe here," he said firmly, "and because your child needs you steady." The reminder sliced through her panic. Her hand instinctively covered her stomach. The baby. Her baby. She wasn't just afraid for herself anymore. Her eyes lifted to his. "Why are you doing this, Luca? Why risk yourself for me? For a child that isn't even yours?" His silence lingered before he answered, his voice lower, almost vulnerable. "Because I know what it's like to grow up in fear. And I won't let your child live that way." The confession struck her harder than any threat. For the first time she wondered what pain hid behind his calm mask, what childhood could create a man who now ruled with power and shadows. Before she could ask, the guard returned, holding a phone. "Sir, we traced activity linked to Blake." Elena's heart lurched. "Where is he?" The guard's voice shook. "Not where. Who? He's with the Colombo family." Luca's face hardened instantly, his calm turning into cold steel. Elena didn't know the name, but she saw the way his men stiffened, the way tension filled the air like static before a storm. "The Colombos," Luca muttered, almost to himself. "Of course." Elena whispered, "Who are they?" Luca's eyes met hers, unflinching. "The oldest rival family. And if Adrian's with them, it means war." Her breath caught in her throat. War. The word slammed into her chest, heavier than her fear had ever been. Before she could speak, the penthouse phone rang. The guard answered, his face blanching before he handed it to Luca. Luca pressed it to his ear. Silence. Then his jaw tightened. He spoke only 2 words, his voice deadly calm. "They have her." Elena's heart stopped. Elena's blood froze at Luca's words. "They have her." Her voice cracked. Who? Who do they have?" Luca's eyes, sharp as steel, shifted to her with a weight that crushed her chest. "Sophia," he said quietly. "Your friend. They took her." Elena's knees buckled. Sophia, her best friend since college, the only person who knew the truth about her pregnancy, the only one who stood by her when Adrian abandoned her. The thought of Sophia in the hands of men who had just sprayed bullets into a penthouse made Elena's stomach twist until she thought she might be sick. "No, no, please," she whispered, tears welling. "She has nothing to do with this." "That's why they took her," Luca replied grimly. "She's leverage. They want me distracted. They want you vulnerable." Elena pressed both hands to her face, shaking. This wasn't fair. Sophia hadn't asked for any of this. She had just been a friend, an innocent friend who now might pay the price for Elena's desperate kiss in a bar. Her voice broke. "We have to get her back." Luca leaned forward, his presence grounding but unyielding. "And we will, but you need to understand what this means." "What it means," Elena snapped, anger cutting through her fear. "It means my best friend is in danger because of me. Because of you." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Luca's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. "You're right," he said finally, his voice low. "This is my world, and anyone near me becomes a target. That's why I warned you." Her tears spilled over, hot and bitter. "Then why did you let me get close? Why did you kiss me back? Why did you let me think for even a second that I was safe with you?" Luca's gaze locked onto hers, and for once, the calm mask cracked. "Because the moment I touched you, I knew I'd burn the world before letting anyone hurt you." The room went silent. His words should have scared her. Maybe they did. But they also left her trembling for another reason she couldn't admit, not yet. The guard who'd brought the call stepped forward. "Sir, the Colombos sent a message. They want a meeting." Luca's eyes narrowed. "Where?" "Docks. Midnight." Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. Docks. Midnight. Every movie, every story she'd ever heard about mob deals ended the same way, with blood on the concrete. No, she whispered. You can't go. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, Luca said, standing. But if I don't walk into it, Sophia dies. Elena pushed to her feet, desperation clawing through her. Then I'll go too. His head snapped toward her. Absolutely not. She's my friend, Elena cried. You think I can just sit here while they hurt her because of me? Luca strode closer, his presence overwhelming. You're pregnant. That child is your responsibility. You don't get to gamble with both your lives. Her chest tightened, torn between rage and fear. He was right, but it didn't make it hurt less. She sank back into the couch, sobbing into her hands. Luca crouched in front of her, his voice softer now. Trust me, I'll bring her back. Her tear-streaked eyes lifted to his. And if you don't? His gaze didn't waver. Then I won't come back either. The words struck her like a blade. Before she could protest, he stood, pulling on his jacket, his men already moving with precision around him. The clock ticked closer to midnight, every second hammering against Elena's chest. When the door closed behind Luca, Elena whispered into the silence, her voice breaking. Please, come back. But deep down, she knew the Colombos weren't planning to let anyone walk away. The docks reeked of salt and rust, the midnight air heavy with mist rolling off the water. Cargo containers loomed like silent giants, their shadows broken only by the glow of overhead lamps. Luca's black car pulled to a stop, its headlights cutting through the fog before shutting off. The world went eerily quiet. Only the lapping waves against the wooden piers broke the silence. Luca stepped out, flanked by two of his men. His presence was calm, precise, but his eyes were sharp, scanning every movement in the shadows. He didn't need to ask where the Colombos were hiding. He could feel them, waiting, watching, armed. Stay alert, Luca murmured to his men. From the darkness, figures emerged. A dozen, maybe more, dressed in black, guns slung low at their sides. And at the center of them was Marco Colombo himself. Tall, broad, his slick hair gleaming under the docklight. He walked forward with the arrogance of a man who believed the night belonged to him. And then Elena's worst fear was confirmed. Sophia. She was dragged out by two men, her hands bound, her lips split, her eyes wide with terror. She stumbled as they shoved her forward, her voice breaking in a muffled sob. Luca's jaw clenched, but his steps remained measured. Let her go, he said, his voice carrying across the dock with chilling steadiness. Marco smirked. You're not in a position to make demands, Moretti. You killed my men, and you think you'll just walk away? No, tonight, you pay. I don't pay, Luca said flatly. I collect. You know that. The words rippled through the dock like a cold wind. Even Marco's men shifted uneasily. But Marco only laughed, harsh and loud. You think your reputation scares me? Times are changing. Your family is weak. That's why you're here, begging for a woman's life. Luca's gaze flicked to Sophia, terrified, trembling, then back to Marco. His voice dropped, lethal in its calm. She's innocent. This isn't between us. Marco shrugged. Collateral damage, unless... He raised a finger, grinning. You hand over Elena Rossi, the pregnant little schoolteacher you've been hiding. You give her to us, and maybe your friend walks free. The words struck like a blade. Sophia whimpered, shaking her head, as if to beg Luca not to even consider it. Luca didn't blink. Not going to happen. Marco's smile widened. Then watch her die. One of the men pressed a gun to Sophia's head. She screamed, her body buckling against her captors. Luca's men tensed, their fingers twitching near their weapons, but Luca lifted a hand, a signal to hold. His calmness unsettled even the Colombos. You kill her, Luca said softly, and I'll erase your entire bloodline by sunrise. The silence that followed was suffocating. Marco's smirk faltered just slightly, his bravado cracking under Luca's icy threat. But he covered it with a laugh. You talk big, Moretti, but talk doesn't keep people alive. Luca's eyes narrowed. Neither does stupidity. Then it happened. The shriek of tires split the night. A second car tore into the docks, its headlights blinding. Gunfire erupted as figures leapt out, bullets spraying. Sophia dropped to the ground, screaming, as chaos exploded around her. Luca shoved one of his men down, firing back with deadly precision. The docks lit up with muzzle flashes, sparks, and screams. Through the chaos, Marco vanished into the shadows. The Colombos scattered, dragging Sophia with them. Luca cursed under his breath, firing until the last enemy fell. Then he turned, breath harsh, eyes scanning, but Sophia was gone. The docks still reeked of gunpowder when Luca returned to the penthouse, his suit streaked with grime, his jaw set like stone. Elena sprang to her feet the second he entered, her hands clutching her belly. "Where's Sophia?" she cried, her voice breaking. Luca's silence was answer enough. Elena's knees weakened. Tears spilled before she could stop them. "No, please don't tell me they." "She's alive," Luca said firmly, cutting her panic. "They took her, which means they still need her." Her breath hitched, half relief, half terror. Alive. But in whose hands? Luca poured a drink, swallowing it in one long drag. For once his composure looked strained. "They slipped through because someone tipped them off. They knew our security patterns. They knew exactly how to hit." Elena's heart sank. "A traitor?" "Worse," Luca muttered, tossing the glass aside. "An ally turned against us." Before she could question, one of his men rushed in, a folder in hand. "Sir, we traced the money transfer that funded tonight's attack. Offshore accounts." The signature was masked, but he hesitated. "But what?" Luca snapped. The man placed the folder on the table, his eyes flicking nervously toward Elena. It was Adrian Blake. Elena froze. The room tilted. "No," she whispered. "No, that's impossible." But the evidence was there. Transactions, digital trails, dates matching perfectly with Adrian's sudden wealth after their divorce. Luca's gaze locked on hers, unwavering. "He didn't just sell you out to the Colombos. He financed them." Her stomach churned, bile rising in her throat. Adrian, the man who once kissed her forehead in the mornings, who swore he'd take care of her, who abandoned her the second she became inconvenient, he was now paying criminals to destroy her. She staggered back, pressing a hand to her mouth. He used me as bait." Luca's voice was sharp. "And now he's bargaining with them. They think keeping Sophia gives them leverage. But Adrian, he knows the one thing that truly binds you." Elena's hand flew to her belly. "The baby." Her whisper was barely audible, but Luca heard it. His eyes hardened to steel. "He'll trade Sophia for you. For both of you." Elena's body trembled so violently she thought her legs might give out. Her unborn child was no longer just her secret. It was a weapon in Adrian's hands. "No," she said, shaking her head furiously. "He wouldn't." But even as she spoke, she knew it was a lie. Adrian had already proven he'd cross every line to get what he wanted. "He would," Luca said flatly, "and he will." The room spun. Elena felt like she was drowning, pulled between fear, rage, and despair. She clutched her stomach, whispering to the life inside her. "I won't let him take you. I won't." Luca stepped closer, his voice lower, dangerous. "Then we stop him before he makes his move. He thinks hiding behind the Colombos protects him, but tonight proved otherwise. He's not untouchable." Elena's tear-streaked face lifted to his, desperate. "And Sophia? What if they kill her?" Luca's eyes narrowed. "They won't. Not until they get what they want." His certainty should have reassured her, but instead it twisted her stomach tighter. Suddenly his phone buzzed. He answered, listening silently, his jaw hardening with each word. When he hung up, he looked at Elena. "They sent proof." Her heart stopped. "What proof?" Luca opened his phone, turning the screen toward her. The image hit her like a knife. Sophia, tied to a chair, bruised, terrified, holding a newspaper with today's date, and standing behind her, smirking at the camera, was Adrian. Elena's scream tore through the penthouse as the photo glared from Luca's phone. Sophia's bruised face, her trembling hands clutching a newspaper, and behind her, Adrian, grinning like the devil himself. "No!" Elena sobbed, clutching the device as if she could rip her friend out of the image. "He's gonna kill her." Luca's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing with an icy fury that could shatter steel. "Not yet. If he wanted her dead, she wouldn't be in that photo. He's sending a message." Elena's voice shook. "What message?" As if in answer, Luca's phone buzzed again. This time a video feed opened. Adrian's smug face filled the screen. "Hello, Elena," Adrian drawled, his tone dripping venom. "Miss me?" Elena's body went rigid. The sound of his voice made her stomach twist with nausea. "You bastard," she whispered, tears spilling. Adrian chuckled darkly. "Language, my love. Remember, Sophia's life depends on how polite you are to me." Behind him, Sophia whimpered, bound to the chair. A man's hand shoved her head down, forcing her into frame like a prop. Elena's heart splintered. "Please, Adrian, she has nothing to do with this. Let her go." "Oh, but she does," Adrian sneered. "She helped hide you. She encouraged your little rebellion. Actions have consequences." Luca's voice sliced through, calm but lethal. "What do you want, Blake?" Adrian's eyes flicked toward him, and for the first time his smile faltered. So, the mysterious stranger finally speaks. I should have known. Only a man like you could lure Elena into bed while carrying another man's child. Elena flinched at the cruelty, but Luca didn't react. His stillness was more dangerous than any outburst. Adrian leaned closer to the camera, his tone hardening. Here's the deal. Midnight tomorrow. You bring Elena to me, alone. No guards, no tricks. In exchange, Sophia walks free. Elena's blood turned to ice. No, she whispered, shaking her head furiously. No, I'm not going. Adrian's smirk widened, cruel and triumphant. Oh yes, you are. Because if you don't, Sophia's blood will be on your hands. And after her, who's next? That sweet baby inside you? Don't test me, Elena. You know I always get what I want. She pressed her hands protectively over her stomach, bile rising in her throat. The video cut off, leaving the room heavy with silence. Elena collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. He'll kill her, Luca. He'll kill her just to hurt me. Luca crouched in front of her, his hand steady on her knee. Listen to me. He wants control. He thinks fear will break you, but he underestimates you, and he underestimates me. Her tear-filled eyes searched his. What do we do? If I don't go, Sophia dies. If I do, he wins. Luca's gaze darkened. Then we make him believe he's winning. We give him what he thinks he wants, and take everything from him in return. Elena shook her head. That's too dangerous. If something happens to me, the baby. I won't let anything happen to you, Luca cut in, his voice sharp, almost desperate. You and your child are under my protection. That's not a promise. That's law. Her chest ached at the intensity in his words. Part of her wanted to believe him, to lean into his strength. But Adrian's shadow loomed too large. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Luca rose to his full height, his expression carved from stone. Tomorrow, he said, his tone final, we end Adrian Blake. Elena's breath caught, her heart torn between terror and hope. Because if Luca failed, she would lose Sophia, and possibly her own life. The clock on the wall ticked past 2 a.m., each second dragging like an eternity. Elena sat curled on the edge of the leather sofa, her arms wrapped around herself, exhaustion pressing heavy against her body. But sleep was impossible. Tomorrow, midnight, she was supposed to walk into Adrian's hands. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sophia's battered face, the smirk on Adrian's lips, and the cold threat in his voice. She had no choice. If she didn't go, Sophia would die. But the thought of her baby tightened like a fist around her heart. She whispered to the swell of her belly, I promised I'd protect you. I can't let him touch you. I won't. Across the room, Luca stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. Orders, strategies, details she couldn't understand. His voice was sharp, commanding, but beneath it she sensed the same restless anger that churned inside her. When he hung up, he turned, his gaze falling on her. You should rest. She let out a hollow laugh. How can I? My best friend is chained up somewhere, waiting to die. And tomorrow I'm supposed to walk into hell. You're not walking in alone, Luca said, stepping closer. His eyes held hers, steady and dark. Adrian thinks he's clever, but he forgets. He's playing a game I was born into. I know his moves before he makes them. Elena shook her head, fear bubbling over. But what if he wins? What if Sophia dies? What if he... Luca crouched in front of her, his hands resting lightly on her knees, grounding her. Listen to me. I don't lose, not when it comes to people under my protection. Her breath caught at his words. That certainty, that unshakable belief in his own power, it should have scared her, but instead it steadied her, if only for a moment. She swallowed hard. So what's the plan? For the first time a faint smile ghosted across his lips. We give him what he asked for. You. But on my terms. Her stomach dropped. Me? It's the only way, Luca said. He'll never release Sophia unless he believes he has you. So we let him believe it. Her pulse thundered. And if he doesn't let her go? Then he dies, Luca said simply, his voice cold steel. The finality of it sent a shiver down her spine. Hours bled together as preparations unfolded. Luca's men moved like shadows, setting routes, marking snipers, loading weapons. Maps were spread across the marble table, every street, every alleyway near the docks mapped with precision. Elena sat among it all, feeling like a fragile piece of glass in the middle of a war machine. She was a teacher, a woman who once dreamed of quiet nights in baby cribs. Now she was bait in a mafia war. At dawn, Luca returned to her side, placing a small velvet box in her hands. She blinked, confused. "What is this?" "An earpiece," he said. "So I'll hear you, every word, every breath. No matter what happens, you won't be alone." Her throat tightened as she held the tiny device. Somehow it felt heavier than gold. "Why are you doing this for me?" she whispered. Luca's eyes softened, just barely. "Because the night you kissed me, you didn't just save yourself, you saved me too." The words pierced deeper than she was ready for. Before she could answer, one of his men burst into the room, pale and breathless. "Boss, we intercepted a message." Luca straightened. "From who?" The man hesitated. "From Adrian. He knows the plan." Elena's blood turned to ice. The room froze at the guard's words. "Adrian knows the plan." Elena's breath hitched. What does that mean? How could he know? Luca's expression darkened, his jaw clenching as he turned slowly toward his men. "We have a leak." Silence. The weight of his words pressed like a blade at every throat in the room. No one dared move. Finally, Luca pointed to two guards. "Search everyone, phones, comms, every channel. I want them all exposed before sundown." The men scattered to obey, but the pit in Elena's stomach only deepened. Adrian had always been cunning, manipulative, but this was different. He wasn't just a jealous ex anymore. He was calculating with the precision of someone who knew the game. She whispered, almost to herself, "He's always one step ahead." Luca's gaze snapped to her, sharp as glass. Not anymore. But even as he said it, she caught the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The day bled into chaos. Reports came in from every corner of the city. Adrian had been seen at the docks, then uptown, then nowhere at all. His movements were ghosts, his allies multiplying in shadows. The Colombos had armed men everywhere, their presence thick in the very neighborhoods Elena used to walk through freely. She felt caged. Every window of the penthouse seemed like a sniper's perch. Every sound outside was a threat. By late afternoon, Luca returned from the war room, his shoulders tense, his expression darker than ever. "We move tonight?" he said. Elena's heart slammed. "But you said he knows." "That's exactly why we move," Luca cut in. "He thinks we'll hesitate, that his threats will freeze us. We strike before he's ready." Her voice cracked. "And me? What do I do?" Luca's eyes softened as he crouched in front of her, his hand brushing hers gently. "You stay alive. You trust me. That's all I need from you." Her chest ached at the weight of his words. He made it sound so simple, yet every nerve in her body screamed that nothing about this was simple. As night fell, the convoy prepared. Black SUVs lined the underground garage, engines low and steady, men loading weapons with deadly precision. Elena stood at the edge, clutching the earpiece he had given her. "This feels like goodbye," she whispered. Luca turned, his gaze locking onto hers. "It's not?" But before the moment could settle, one of his men rushed forward, breathless, holding a tablet. "Boss, we traced Adrian's signal. He sent another video." The screen flickered to life. Adrian appeared, lounging in a chair, sipping whiskey like a man who had already won. Behind him, Sophia sat bound, her eyes swollen from crying. "Well, well," Adrian sneered. "Planning something clever, Luca? I told you, I know every move you make. You think you can outsmart me? You're already playing on my board." Elena's hands trembled as Adrian leaned forward, his grin widening. "Tomorrow night's meeting? Forget it. You won't find me there. I've chosen a new stage, one where Elena will feel very at home." He raised a piece of paper, holding it to the camera. Elena's stomach dropped when she recognized it instantly. A sonogram. Her baby's sonogram. "No," she whispered, her knees buckling. Adrian's voice dripped with poison. "If you ever want to see Sophia alive again, Elena comes to me at the place where it all began. Alone, or your friend dies, and your child will never draw its first breath." The screen went black. The room fell silent. Luca's fists clenched, his face a mask of fury. Elena's tears streamed unchecked. She knew exactly where Adrian wanted her. Back at the bar where she had kissed a stranger. The neon lights of the bar flickered like dying stars as Elena stood across the street, her body trembling. The place looked the same as the night her world had changed. The same crooked sign, the same thrum of bass inside, the same heavy smell of whiskey and cigarettes drifting into the night air. But everything was different now. That night, she had kissed a stranger to save herself. Tonight, she was walking back into the lion's den to save her friend. Her hand instinctively pressed against her stomach. The baby kicked softly, a cruel reminder of what was at stake. "Please," she whispered, "just let me get through this." Behind her, Luca's black SUV idled. He stepped out, his presence towering, his dark suit blending into the shadows. His men spread out around the block, silent and precise. "You don't go in alone," Luca said firmly, his voice low but commanding. Elena shook her head, tears brimming. "He said I had to. If he sees you, he'll kill her." Luca's jaw tightened. "And if you go in without me, he'll kill you." Her heart ached at the desperation in his voice. For once, the mask of the unshakable Mafia heir cracked, and she saw the man beneath, the man who feared losing her more than losing the war. "I have to do this," Elena whispered. "For Sofia, for the baby." Luca stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek with surprising tenderness. "Then you wear this." He slipped the earpiece into her hand again, his eyes burning into hers. "Every word, every breath, I'll hear you. If he tries anything, I'll be there before he touches you." Her throat tightened. "Promise me you won't risk yourself." He didn't answer. His silence was promise enough. With shaking legs, Elena crossed the street and pushed open the heavy door. The bar was dim, nearly empty, but not abandoned. Adrian sat at the same corner table where Luca once had, his posture smug, a glass of bourbon in his hand. Sofia was beside him, tied to a chair, her eyes swollen and terrified. "Elena," Adrian drawled, rising slowly, "you came, just like I knew you would." Elena's voice shook. "Let her go." Adrian smirked, circling her like a predator. "Always so noble, always willing to sacrifice yourself. That's what I loved about you, and what I hated." He stopped inches from her, his eyes flicking to her stomach. "So it's true, my child." Elena's arms instinctively shielded her belly. "He's not yours, not anymore." Adrian's face twisted with rage. "Don't you dare say that. That child is mine, Elena. You think you can erase me? Replace me with him?" Her breath caught. He knew about Luca. Adrian leaned closer, his whisper venomous. "Do you even know who you're sleeping next to? He's worse than me. A killer. A Mafia prince. You traded one monster for another." Her chest tightened. "At least he protects me. At least he protects my child." Adrian's laugh was sharp, cruel. "Protects you? He's using you. The Moretti name needs a wife, an heir, a symbol. You're nothing more than a convenient lie. Do you really think he loves you?" Her knees wobbled, the words cutting deep, planting seeds of doubt she didn't want to water. Then Adrian grabbed her wrist, his grip bruising. "But you don't get to choose. You're mine, and tonight I'm taking you back." In her ear, Luca's voice crackled through the earpiece, steady but urgent. "Stay calm, I'm coming in." Adrian yanked her closer, his breath hot against her ear. "If he steps one foot inside, Sofia dies." Elena's heart pounded as she looked at her friend, then at the door. And she realized she might have to choose between the man who wanted her body and the man who had her heart. The bar pulsed with silence, every second stretching like a noose around Elena's throat. Adrian's grip on her wrist tightened, his smirk widening as if he already owned her again. "You think Luca can save you?" he whispered cruelly. "He's nothing but a criminal dressed in silk. He'll throw you away the moment you stop being useful." Elena's lips trembled, but she forced the words out. "At least he's not you." Adrian's eyes darkened, rage flashing like lightning. He shoved her into the chair opposite Sofia, their hands brushing briefly, both trembling. Sofia's eyes pleaded silently, "Don't give in." In her ear, Luca's voice came, low and steady. 10 seconds. Her heart raced. Adrian paced like a predator, his glass clinking against the table as he took another deliberate sip. "You don't get it, Elena. You can't run from me. Not in court, not in life, not even in death. That child is mine. And you'll crawl back to me, no matter how hard you fight." The door burst open. Luca strode in, flanked by 2 men, his presence filling the room like a storm. His gun was drawn, his eyes locked on Adrian with lethal focus. "Let them go," Luca said. His voice was calm, but the air around him bristled with violence. Adrian laughed, manic and sharp. "You're predictable, Moretti. Always playing the hero. But this isn't your fairy tale." He yanked a gun from his waistband, pressing it against Sofia's head. She whimpered, choking on sobs. "Take another step," Adrian snarled, "and she dies." Luca didn't flinch. His gun never wavered. "You don't want to do that." "Don't tell me what I want," Adrian shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of his fury. "You think you can steal my woman, my child, and walk away? No. Tonight, I end this." Elena's voice broke through the chaos. "Adrian, please, look at me. This isn't you." Adrian whipped his head toward her, eyes blazing. "Shut up! You ruined me, Elena. You took everything, and now you're trying to give it to him." Luca's men shifted, their fingers brushing triggers, but Luca lifted a hand, silent command. His gaze never left Adrian. "You ruined yourself," Luca said coldly, "and you're not taking her with you." The standoff was suffocating. Elena's heart pounded so violently she thought she might pass out. She looked at Luca, at the unwavering strength in his stance, and felt something she hadn't in months: hope. Adrian's hand trembled. His arrogance was cracking, fear seeping through the fury. He pressed the gun harder against Sophia's temple, his voice breaking. "If I can't have her, no one will." That was the breaking point. A single gunshot shattered the air. Elena screamed, covering her head as Sophia shrieked beside her. For a heartbeat the world spun in silence, smoke curling in the dim light. Slowly, Elena lifted her gaze. Adrian stood frozen, his eyes wide, his gun slipping from his grasp. A crimson bloom spread across his shoulder. Luca lowered his weapon, his hand steady, his expression unreadable. "Last chance, Blake. Walk away alive." Adrian's face twisted with pain and fury. "You think this is over?" he spat, clutching his wound. "You've just declared war." He stumbled backward, his men rushing to drag him out the side door. Within seconds, the bar was empty except for Luca, Elena, and Sophia's muffled sobs. Elena rushed to her friend, cutting the ropes with shaking hands, pulling her into a trembling embrace. Relief flooded her so hard she could barely breathe. But Luca's eyes were still locked on the door, his jaw tight. He knew what Adrian said was true. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The bar reeked of gunpowder and fear as silence settled over the room. Elena held Sophia tightly, her friend trembling in her arms. For the first time in hours, Sophia wasn't in danger, but relief was fragile, fleeting. Across the room, Luca stood like a statue, his gun still warm in his hand, his gaze fixed on the door Adrian had fled through. He looked calm, but Elena knew better. Beneath that calm, fury raged. "Luca," she whispered, her voice raw. "He's not going to stop." Luca finally lowered his weapon, sliding it back into its holster. "No," he agreed. "He won't, which means I can't either." Sophia clung to Elena, tears streaking her bruised face. "I thought he was going to kill me." "Elena, he's insane. He kept saying you belonged to him, that the baby was his." Elena's chest tightened, her hand instinctively pressing to her belly. "He'll never touch my child," she whispered fiercely. Luca stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "He won't. I'll make sure of it." But even as he said the words, Elena saw the storm brewing in his eyes. This wasn't just about Adrian anymore. The Colombos had tasted blood, and now the war was inevitable. They returned to the penthouse under heavy guard. Luca's men swarmed the building, radios crackling, weapons locked and loaded. Elena felt like she was living inside a war zone instead of a home. Sophia collapsed into a guest room, too exhausted to speak. Elena lingered in the living room, staring out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. She should have felt relief. Sophia was safe, Adrian was wounded, but dread pressed down on her chest. Behind her, Luca poured a drink, his movements sharp, restless. "He won't stop until he destroys everything I care about," he muttered. Elena turned, her voice trembling. "Then what do we do?" Luca looked at her, his expression carved from stone. "We end this, once and for all." Her stomach twisted. She had heard that tone before, in stories of men who never came home, in histories written in blood. "You mean war," she whispered. He didn't deny it. "Adrian has allied with the Colombos. That means he's declared war on me, on my family, and war is answered only one way." Her knees weakened. "Luca, if you fight him, if you fight them, more people will die. Innocent people." He cut her off, his voice sharp. "Do you think I want this? Do you think I chose this life? Every drop of blood spilled is on Adrian's hands, not mine. But if I don't strike back, he'll take you. He'll take your child. He'll take everything." Tears blurred her vision. She hated that he was right. She hated that the only way forward seemed to be paved with violence. She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "And what about you? What if I lose you too?" For the first time, his mask slipped. He reached out, cupping her face gently. "Then I'll fight harder. Because losing you is the one thing I won't survive." Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. The man who terrified the city spoke those words with such raw honesty that she almost forgot he was a mafia boss. Almost. The sound of hurried footsteps broke the moment. One of Luca's lieutenants rushed in, breathless. "Boss, we just got word. The Colombos are moving. They're gathering at their compound. Dozens of men, heavy weapons. They're preparing for war." Luca's eyes narrowed, his hand dropping from Elena's cheek. His voice turned to steel. Then we'll meet them head on. Elena's stomach dropped. She pressed both hands over her belly, whispering a prayer for the life inside her. Because tomorrow, blood would drown the city. The night bled into dawn as Luca's convoy roared through the empty streets. Engines growled like beasts on chains, headlights slicing through the darkness. Elena sat in the back seat, her hands trembling over her stomach. Every bump in the road jolted her nerves. She should have been anywhere but here. Safe. Hidden. Far from the violence about to erupt. But she couldn't leave. Not when Adrian threatened her child. Not when Luca might not return if she wasn't there. The compound loomed ahead, a fortress of steel gates and armed guards. Shadows moved across the walls, guns glinting in the moonlight. It looked less like a home and more like a battlefield waiting to be claimed. "Stay in the car," Luca ordered, his eyes dark and unyielding. Elena's throat tightened. "And if you don't come back?" He leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. For a moment, time stilled. "Then remember I loved you enough to fight for you until my last breath." Tears blurred her vision, but before she could respond, he was gone. The battle erupted instantly. Gunfire split the night, echoing like thunder. Luca's men moved with ruthless precision, cutting down Colombos as they surged from the gates. Elena clutched the seat, her heart slamming against her ribs with every shot, every scream. Through the haze of smoke and chaos, she saw him, Luca, moving like a shadow, each step calculated, each shot lethal. He was unstoppable, terrifying, beautiful in his defiance. But then she saw him too. Adrian. He emerged from the compound, blood seeping through his bandaged shoulder, his face twisted with rage, and in his hand Sophia, dragged forward once again, a knife pressed to her throat. "Stop!" Adrian roared, his voice cutting through the battlefield. "Drop your guns or she dies." The world froze. Luca halted mid-step, his gun raised, his eyes locked on Adrian. "Let her go," Luca said, his voice deadly calm. Adrian sneered. "Always the hero. But here's the truth, Moretti. You don't win tonight unless you're willing to kill her too." He pressed the blade harder, Sophia whimpering. "So choose, your empire or your woman's friend." Elena's scream broke the silence. "Adrian, stop, please." She shoved the car door open, stumbling onto the battlefield, her tears glistening in the firelight. Adrian's eyes widened at the sight of her. "Elena," his voice cracked, softer for the first time. "Come to me. Bring the baby. We can fix this. We can be a family again." Her chest heaved, rage burning through her fear. "Family? You abandoned me. You tried to kill me. You sold me to your enemies." Adrian's face twisted, desperation mixing with fury. "Because I loved you, and I won't let him take you from me." The standoff stretched, unbearable. Then Luca's voice cut like steel. "You already lost." A single shot rang out. Adrian staggered, his knife falling, blood blooming across his chest. He collapsed to the ground, his eyes wide with shock. For the first time, Adrian Blake looked powerless. Sophia stumbled free, sobbing into Elena's arms. Relief crashed over them both as Luca strode forward, lowering his weapon, his eyes never leaving Adrian's crumpled form. Adrian's final words rasped through bloodied lips. "He'll destroy you too, Elena. You'll see." Then he was gone. The battlefield fell silent. The Colombos scattered, their leaderless men retreating into the shadows. Luca turned, his gaze finding Elena through the smoke. For the first time his expression softened. Not the mask of a mafia boss, but the face of a man who had fought and bled for the woman he loved. She ran to him, collapsing into his arms, sobbing against his chest. His hand cradled her head, his lips brushing her hair. "It's over," he whispered. "You're safe. Our child is safe." For the first time, Elena believed him. Weeks later, the city buzzed with rumors of the war, of the fall of the Colombos, of Adrian Blake's mysterious death. But in a villa overlooking the Sicilian Sea, Elena stood in white, her hands resting over her belly, as Luca placed a ring on her finger. The kiss they shared wasn't born of desperation this time. It was a promise, a future, a love forged in fire, now bound in peace. Elena whispered against his lips, tears of joy spilling freely. "We survived." And Luca's answer was simple, steady, forever. "We live." So our story has finally come to an end. And here you are, still with us. If you're watching at this point, it probably means something in Elena's journey touched your heart in a way you didn't expect. Maybe it's the way she fought for her child, or the way she found strength inside chaos, Or maybe it's how love showed up where she least expected it. Whatever it is, take a breath with me now and look at it from another angle. The Stoics used to say you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Elena didn't control the storms around her, but she chose who she became inside them. That's the real victory, and it's something we can all bring into our lives. We don't choose what others do to us, but we do choose our courage, our dignity, and the love we protect. If this story moved you, give it a like, share it with someone who might need this reminder today, and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. Because together, in these stories, we heal, we learn, and we grow stronger. The bar was alive with the low hum of jazz and the clinking of glasses, but to Elena Rossi, the noise faded into a cruel silence. She froze the moment she saw him. Adrian Blake, her ex. The man who had once promised her forever, then abandoned her the second he learned she was carrying his child. Her stomach tightened, not just from the swell of her secret pregnancy, but from the humiliation she knew was seconds away. Adrian wasn't alone. On his arm was a young model, glittering in diamonds, the same diamonds he once swore he'd save for Elena. His mocking smile scanned the room until it landed on her. Of all nights, Elena whispered to herself, clutching her glass. She had no makeup to hide the tired lines, no designer dress, just a plain black outfit that did little to conceal the curve of her belly. If Adrian saw, if anyone saw, her fragile dignity would shatter in front of him. Her heart raced. Panic clawed at her throat. She needed a shield, a distraction, anything. That was when she felt it, a pair of dark eyes watching her from across the room. A man alone at the corner table, his presence impossible to ignore. He wasn't loud like the others. He sat with quiet confidence, dressed in a tailored suit that whispered money, power, and danger. Before she could talk herself out of it, she moved. Her heels clicked against the wooden floor as she crossed the room, every step heavy with desperation. The man didn't flinch as she leaned down, her voice trembling. "I need your help," she whispered, her lips close to his ear. "My ex is here, and I can't let him see me like this. Pretend you know me, please." For a second, she thought he would laugh, but instead, the corners of his mouth curved into the faintest smile. Without warning, he stood, his hand rising to cup her cheek with a gentleness that disarmed her. "Perhaps this will convince him," he murmured. And then it happened. His lips pressed against hers, firm, deliberate, steady. The world tilted, the noise of the bar drowned beneath the thunder of her own heartbeat. She hadn't been kissed since Adrian. She hadn't expected the jolt, the heat, the dizzy rush of being held by a stranger who kissed her as if he already owned her. When they pulled apart, Elena's breath caught. Adrian stood across the room, stunned, his smug smirk replaced by fury. The stranger's hand rested lightly on her back, steadying her trembling body. "Your ex looks displeased," the man said calmly, his eyes gleaming with something dark, something dangerous. Elena had no idea that one reckless kiss would tie her fate to his forever. The air in the bar felt heavier now, as if every set of eyes had witnessed the kiss that was never meant to happen. Elena's chest rose and fell in shallow bursts, her pulse racing like she had sprinted a mile. The stranger hadn't stepped away. His hand still rested on her back, firm, steady, protective, yet possessive in a way that unsettled her. Adrian's expression across the room was thunderous. His date tugged at his arm, whispering something to calm him, but his glare never left Elena. She knew that look all too well. It was the same one he wore before every cruel word, every manipulation, every moment he had made her feel small. Tonight, though, he wasn't the only one with power in the room. The stranger finally shifted, turning his full attention on her. His eyes were the deepest brown, almost black, and they carried a dangerous stillness that made Elena's breath hitch. He studied her like a puzzle he intended to solve piece by piece. Then his lips curved into a faint smile. Not warm, not playful, but something sharper. A predator's smile. "What's his name?" the stranger asked, voice low and edged with command. "Adrian," Elena whispered, her throat dry. "Adrian," the man repeated, tasting the name as if committing it to memory. His gaze flicked back toward her ex, whose posture screamed barely contained rage. "He doesn't like to lose, does he?" Elena's stomach tightened. How could this stranger read Adrian so quickly? The man leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. "Don't look away from me," If you do, he'll know you're afraid." So she didn't. She forced herself to meet his gaze, even as her knees threatened to buckle. His eyes locked onto hers with a force that pinned her in place. For a moment, it wasn't Adrian she thought about. It was the man in front of her, the stranger who kissed her without hesitation, who now stood as though the entire bar belonged to him. "What do I call you?" she asked softly, needing something to ground herself. He hesitated, then said simply, "Luca." The name carried weight, as if it belonged to someone who never needed an introduction. "Elena," she replied, her voice shaking despite her effort to stay calm. Luca's smile deepened just slightly, his thumb brushing her arm as though testing her reaction. "Well, Elena, if your Adrian wants a show, let's give him one he won't forget." Before she could protest, Luca slid his arm around her waist and guided her toward the bar counter. The crowd parted without question, as though his presence commanded it. The bartender straightened immediately, setting a glass down before Luca had even spoken. It was subtle, but Elena noticed. This man was not a stranger here. Adrian started moving across the room, his date trailing helplessly behind him. Elena's chest tightened. He was coming closer, and she knew the storm in his eyes was aimed squarely at her. Luca picked up the glass, handed it to Elena with a look that brooked no refusal. "Drink," he said softly. "Let him see you're not broken." Her fingers trembled as she obeyed, the cool liquid steadying her nerves. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of control. She wasn't standing alone. Adrian finally reached them, his voice sharp. "Elena, we need to talk." Luca didn't even glance at him. He leaned down, close enough that only Elena could hear. "Stay calm, I'll handle this." Then Luca finally turned his head, meeting Adrian's glare with a calm, unreadable expression. The air between them shifted, thick with tension. And in that moment, Elena realized the truth. Whatever power Adrian once held over her, it was nothing compared to the man standing at her side. Adrian's glare burned holes through the air, but Luca stood unshaken. His calmness wasn't arrogance, it was command. Elena felt it in the way the room obeyed him, in the way even Adrian hesitated before speaking again. "Elena," Adrian repeated, his voice sharp, "we need to talk alone." Before she could answer, Luca placed his glass on the counter and spoke, his tone steady but edged with steel. "She's not interested." The words cut the air. Adrian stiffened, his jaw tightening, but Luca's eyes remained cool, detached. It was the look of a man who had already decided the outcome. Elena's heart pounded. "Excuse me?" Adrian snapped. "This is between us." Luca finally shifted his gaze to him, slow and deliberate. Not anymore. The silence that followed was suffocating. Adrian opened his mouth, but before he could spew another word, Luca guided Elena toward the exit, his hand firm at her back. She stumbled, half in shock, half in fear of what Adrian might do. Yet no one stopped them. Not Adrian, not the crowd, not the staff who seemed to part like water at Luca's approach. Outside, the cool night air rushed over her flushed cheeks. Elena's breath came quick, each inhale sharper than the last. She turned, ready to protest, but the words died in her throat. A sleek black car waited at the curb. Its polished surface reflected the neon lights of the city, and beside it stood a driver in a dark suit, his expression unreadable but respectful. He opened the rear door without being asked. Elena froze. I can go home on my own," she stammered. Luca's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "Not tonight. He won't leave you alone." Her stomach twisted. He was right. Adrian had followed her before. He had appeared outside her apartment, his anger sharp and cruel. She didn't doubt he would do it again. Still, climbing into a stranger's car felt insane. Every instinct told her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. Luca stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You're shaking," he said quietly. His tone wasn't mocking, it was observation, almost gentle. "Let me get you somewhere safe." Something in his voice, calm, certain, broke through her fear. Against her better judgment, she nodded, allowing him to guide her into the car's leather interior. The scent inside was rich, a mix of expensive cologne and new leather, a world far removed from her modest life. The door shut softly, sealing her fate. Luca slid in beside her, his presence filling the space with quiet authority. The driver started the engine, pulling smoothly into traffic. Elena pressed her hands together in her lap, nerves buzzing. "You didn't have to do that back there," she whispered. "Yes, I did." Luca replied simply. "He was about to humiliate you." His bluntness made her cheeks burn. She wanted to argue, but deep down she knew he was right. Adrian thrived on control. He would have crushed her tonight if Luca hadn't stepped in. Still, questions tumbled through her mind. Who was this man? Why did the bartender obey him without hesitation? Why did strangers clear a path as though he owned the place? She turned, studying him in the dim glow of passing streetlights. His profile was sharp, carved with power. He looked calm, but beneath that calmness was something heavier, something dangerous. "Who are you, really?" she asked softly. Luca's lips curved into that same faint smile, the one that unsettled her. "A man who doesn't like bullies," he said. It wasn't the truth. She felt it. But it was all he was willing to give. The car slowed, pulling into the underground garage of a towering building of glass and steel. Security guards in tailored suits stood at attention, nodding as Luca stepped out. Elena's pulse spiked. This wasn't a simple apartment. This was something else entirely. As Luca offered his hand to help her out of the car, she realized with a chill that she hadn't just accepted a ride. She had stepped into his world. The elevator rose in silence, its smooth hum echoing in Elena's ears. She stood rigid, her heart pounding so loud she was sure Luca could hear it. The car had taken her beneath a skyscraper that shimmered like obsidian against the night sky. Security men in sharp suits had greeted him with nods of respect, their eyes flicking to her only briefly before focusing on Luca with absolute deference. This wasn't normal. Nothing about tonight was normal. She clutched her purse tighter as the elevator glided upward. Luca stood beside her, calm as ever, his hands in his pockets, his presence filling the space. Every detail about him screamed control. The way he breathed evenly, the way his posture never faltered, the way he seemed to own the silence itself. When the elevator doors slid open, Elena's breath caught. The penthouse stretched before her like something out of a dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering skyline of Manhattan. The city sprawled beneath them like a sea of stars. The space was vast, decorated in sleek shades of black, gray, and ivory. Modern art hung on the walls, pieces she recognized from magazines that listed them at prices higher than her entire yearly salary. Crystal decanters gleamed on a bar cart. The leather couches were arranged with a precision that felt both elegant and intimidating. "This is where you live," Elena whispered, unable to hide her awe. Luca's lips curved faintly. "One of the places." Her head whipped toward him. One of the places? Who exactly was this man? A man in a dark suit stepped forward from a side hallway. "Good evening, sir," he said respectfully, then turned to Elena with a neutral smile. "Guest room is prepared." "Guest room?" Elena's confusion deepened. "You'll stay here tonight?" Luca said simply, moving past her to pour himself a drink. His voice was calm, matter-of-fact, as though the decision had already been made and her agreement was irrelevant. She spun to face him. I can't stay here. I should go home." "No." His answer was immediate, firm, leaving no space for argument. "Adrian knows where you live. He won't stop tonight." The truth in his words made her chest tighten. Memories of Adrian's sudden appearances outside her apartment, the late-night phone calls, the threats whispered with that cruel smile, they all came flooding back. Still, she hesitated. Being here, in this palace of glass and power, felt like stepping into a trap she didn't understand. Luca studied her quietly, sipping his drink. "You don't have to trust me," he said at last, his voice softer. "But for now, trust that I won't let him hurt you." The words shouldn't have calmed her, but they did. Against every warning bell in her head, Elena felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. The suited man returned, carrying a small bag. "Clothing, toiletries, everything you might need, ma'am." Her eyes widened. "How did you?" "Arrangements were made," Luca interrupted smoothly. It chilled her. In less than an hour, he had somehow acquired her size, her preferences, even the little details she hadn't spoken aloud. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to make sense of it all. "Who are you, Luca?" she whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he set his glass down and stepped closer, his gaze locking onto hers. The intensity in his eyes was almost unbearable, a storm held behind calm restraint. "You'll find out soon enough," he said softly. Before she could respond, a sharp buzz echoed through the room. The suited man hurried to the console by the door, checking the screen. His face tightened. "Sir," he said, his voice tense. "He's here. Adrian Blake is downstairs." Elena's breath caught in her throat as Luca's expression shifted, still calm but colder now, sharper. "Then it begins," he murmured.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our channel. Today we invite you to immerse yourselves in a gripping tale of hidden secrets, a millionaire husband, and a heartbroken, pregnant wife on the brink of a life-altering confrontation. By the end of this story, you'll witness the most dramatic twist of all, a shocking decision that threatens to overturn everything our characters have built. Will the love they once shared be enough to heal the wounds of betrayal? Or will a single act of ultimate deceit destroy their world forever? Stay tuned and listen to the entire story to find out what choice our protagonist makes. It's a journey laced with suspense, heartbreak, and the possibilities of redemption. Remember to hit subscribe and turn on notifications to follow more exciting stories like this one. Comment below to share your thoughts and let us know where you prefer to listen. Harriet Davenport once considered her life in Ravenwood Falls to be a modern-day fairy tale, complete with all the glitz and grandeur that her marriage to millionaire entrepreneur Dominic Davenport afforded her. She was raised in a humble suburb, never dreaming she would one day have access to the most exclusive galas, the finest restaurants, and a sprawling mansion that seemed pulled straight from a storybook. Yet here she was, Harriet Davenport, wife of a charismatic mogul who owned half the city's prime developments and now expecting their first child. From the outside, it looked as though she had everything: security, love, and a future so bright it shone like the diamond ring she wore. But beneath the veneer of this polished existence lurked a faint sense of unease that Harriet tried hard to ignore. Even as she woke each morning to sunlight filtering through brocade curtains, even as she wandered halls adorned with tapestries and regal portraits, she sometimes felt like a visitor in Dominic's dazzling world. She had studied art history in college, devouring knowledge about Renaissance masters and Baroque architecture. That scholarly passion led her to curate philanthropic exhibits, raising funds for children's art programs in underprivileged areas. Dominic, known for his philanthropic gestures, appeared drawn to her idealism from the start. He loved to boast about how Harriet cared deeply about improving the cultural scene of Ravenwood Falls, how she was as refined and cultured as he was ambitious and strong-willed. It was during a fundraiser for a local museum that Harriet met Dominic. She'd been arranging a display of rare manuscripts, anxious about the event, when Dominic appeared like a confident whirlwind in an impeccably tailored suit. From that very first conversation, Harriet felt a magnetic draw toward him. He praised her dedication, joking that a woman who could handle priceless manuscripts could surely handle a man who was often more trouble than he was worth. He had teased her in such a casual, endearing manner that Harriet found herself smiling for days afterward. Their romance progressed at a remarkable pace. Lavish yacht parties, weekend getaways to coastal resorts, and heartfelt conversations over candlelit dinners where Dominic vowed he would always be there to protect and cherish her. Eventually, Dominic proposed in front of a shimmering water wall at the Dahlia estate, one of his prized properties. Harriet cried tears of joy, accepting his ring beneath the hum of gently cascading water. Their wedding followed soon after, an opulent ceremony at the historic Carmichael Villa, owned by their longtime family friends, Victor and Estella Carmichael. The entire city buzzed about the event of the year, marveling at the floral arrangements and high-profile guests. Harriet, floating down the aisle in a custom-made gown, believed she had found the ultimate happily ever after. Yet, as glorious as her new life was, shadows began to surface the moment Harriet learned she was pregnant. Dominic, initially delighted, seemed to throw himself deeper into his work not long after. Frequent late nights, hushed phone calls, and suspicious receipts turned Harriet's once peaceful existence into a labyrinth of unspoken questions. Even as she attributed these changes to the pressure of fatherhood or the demands of running Davenport Enterprises, she couldn't quell the pang of dread in her heart. In this retelling, 4 key strengths drive Harriet's journey forward. First is the raw emotional depth, which captures her heartbreak and her yearning for solace. Second comes the suspense and tension that build each time Dominic's secrets edge closer to being revealed. Third is Harriet's empowerment and resilience, fueling her determination to uncover the truth and protect her future. Lastly, the story weaves a compelling mystery that keeps us turning pages, eager to see whether love can endure devastating betrayal. On a brisk autumn afternoon, Harriet received a call from her closest friend, Francesca Duval, a former art student who had known Harriet since their days in the college dorms. Francesca was one of the few people in Ravenwood Falls who treated Harriet as a person rather than a millionaire's wife. Harriet heard the concern in her friend's voice even before she spoke. "Harriet, I've heard some unsettling rumors. We need to talk," Francesca said, her tone as gentle as possible. Already anxious from Dominic's recent string of absences, Harriet braced herself. Francesca wasted no time in explaining. Dominic had been spotted having dinner with a striking brunette at Ravenwood's latest upscale haunt, a restaurant so exclusive that tables were often booked out weeks in advance. The source was a mutual acquaintance who insisted that the man seated intimately with the woman was indeed Dominic. Harriet's heart seized as she recalled his exact words from that night. "I'll be working late, my darling. Don't wait up." Harriet tried to dismiss the rumor, reminding herself that speculation often swirled around high-profile figures. "It could be a client, maybe a business deal," she offered weakly, but Francesca was unconvinced. "I'm only telling you because I know how important honesty is to you," she said. "I don't want you to be blindsided." That evening, Harriet found herself restless. She wandered the halls of the Davenport mansion, each step echoing off polished marble floors. In the salon, a large portrait of Dominic hung, capturing his self-assured smile and piercing hazel eyes. She recalled how proud he seemed when the painting was unveiled at a charity gala just a year prior. Now the painted gaze felt almost mocking, a silent observer who might hold secrets Harriet longed to uncover. Her mind churned with questions. Could Dominic, the man who once sailed her across moonlit waters to profess his adoration, be betraying her? Harriet was no stranger to the gossip that swirled around affluent circles, but never had she imagined that she herself could become the subject of such brutal speculation. Clutching at her belly, Harriet felt the baby kick gently, a reminder of the precious bond growing within her. For a moment, that small movement grounded her. She resolved to find tangible evidence before making accusations that might destroy whatever remnants of trust remained. Days turned into nights of sleepless turmoil. Harriet tried to hold fast to the memory of her husband's better qualities. She told herself that Dominic could simply be under enormous pressure. Davenport Enterprises had embarked on a series of ambitious real estate developments that demanded meticulous negotiations. Could this mysterious dinner companion be a financier, or someone whose influence Dominic needed on his side? Still, Harriet's hopes were steadily eroded by each unexplained credit card charge, each unknown number that flashed on his phone in the dead of night. Her first real clue arrived in the form of a petite, gold-embossed envelope she discovered in Dominic's car. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for the wonderful evening. I'll never forget it. ANNC." The initials instantly set her nerves on edge. Harriet had never heard Dominic mention a colleague or friend with those initials. This apparent slip pushed her beyond silent doubt. Something was amiss, and she was perilously close to unraveling it. As tension brewed, Harriet sought solace by retreating to her art studio on the mansion's second floor. Once a spare bedroom, it was now lined with canvases, her personal sanctuary, where colors, shapes, and brushstrokes helped her process life's complexities. Painting had always been Harriet's way of channeling both her joys and her sorrows into something tangible. But lately, the canvases showed darker hues and more turbulent swirls, as if reflecting her subconscious fears. When Harriet could no longer live with the uncertainty, she confided in Francesca again. "I need answers," she admitted. "I can't keep making excuses for him in my head." Francesca, always practical, handed Harriet the card of a private investigator named Roman Bennett. He was rumored to be the best in Ravenwood Falls for delicate situations like these. Cases that involved the city's upper echelons, requiring both discretion and skill. After a sleepless night of deliberation, Harriet steeled herself and made the call. They met in a modest coffee shop, far removed from the opulent haunts Harriet usually frequented. Roman Bennett turned out to be a middle-aged man with a patient demeanor and sharp, intelligent eyes that instantly put her at a strange sort of ease. As Harriet explained her predicament, her suspicions, the note with the initials NC, were the rumors swirling around Dominic. Roman took meticulous notes, asking pointed questions, but never pressing for more detail than Harriet was ready to give. "I've handled numerous infidelity cases among high-profile families," Roman said with quiet empathy. "I want you to know you're not alone in what you're feeling." Harriet's lip trembled, but she held herself together. She signed the necessary paperwork, praying that her actions wouldn't turn her life into chaos if the rumors proved false. But she couldn't ignore her instincts any longer. "I just need peace of mind," she whispered. "I want to protect my baby from this kind of pain." That same evening, Harriet found herself waiting anxiously by her phone. She deliberately avoided Dominic, who arrived home just past midnight and claimed exhaustion from an unexpected board meeting. He smelled faintly of expensive perfume, which he insisted was a colleague's cologne that rubbed off during a handshake. Harriet feigned acceptance of this outlandish explanation, but her heart sank further into a mire of betrayal. Over the course of a week, Roman provided intermittent updates. He had discreetly tailed Dominic, documenting late-night drives to a quaint restaurant overlooking the city's glimmering skyline. The place was called La Seraphine, known for its elegant private booths. Roman attached a grainy photo to one of his text messages. Dominic with a woman, her dark hair pinned into a sleek chignon, leaning in close over candlelight. Harriet felt her chest tighten so severely she thought she might faint. The picture was blurry but conclusive. Dominic's posture, his unmistakable profile. She could almost hear the low timbre of his voice, murmuring sweet words to another woman. Still, Harriet needed a name. She needed to know who NC truly was and if Dominic's involvement ran deeper than fleeting infatuation. Roman dug further, sifting through social media clues, corporate filings, and whispers from restaurant staff. Finally, he emailed Harriet the name, Natalia Chambers, a marketing consultant with a small but lucrative client list. She was known to be charming, persuasive, and crucially, unmarried. The shock of seeing Natalia's name in black and white felt like a sudden blow to Harriet's gut. Beneath it, Roman had included notes about Natalia's frequent appearances at private events, her business ties to multiple wealthy entrepreneurs, and rumors of her social climbing. Harriet stared at her phone screen until her eyes blurred with tears. She flicked through the attached photos, each one capturing Dominic in various intimate moments, guiding Natalia through a doorway with a hand at the small of her back, smiling as they clinked glasses of champagne, leaning in to whisper secrets Harriet was never meant to hear. Pain constricted her chest with every new detail. As days passed, Harriet noticed Dominic trying to placate her with little gestures. He would bring home bouquets of peonies, cook her favorite meal, or gently rub her shoulders at night. But these gestures, once comforting, now felt like acts of concealment. If anything, Dominic's forced warmth only amplified her sense of alienation, as though he were a stranger rehearsing lines in a script. One evening, Harriet's resolve to gather definitive proof led her to rummage through Dominic's home office. Amid old receipts and mundane documents, she discovered a slim, leather-bound planner hidden under thick folders marked confidential. Thumbing through it, she saw coded entries that aligned suspiciously with the nights Dominic had claimed to work late. Each cryptic mark, NC private dinner or 10 p.m., carried the ring of deception. Harriet fought the urge to scream. Instead, she gathered her evidence carefully, planning her next move. At that point, Harriet recognized that the situation had escalated beyond mere suspicion. She was on the brink of confronting Dominic, but a part of her dreaded the explosion that might follow. She felt a swirl of emotions, rage, sorrow, and an undeniable love that still lingered, heartbreakingly intertwined with bitterness. She also experienced flickers of guilt, wondering if there was something she had overlooked in her marriage, some way she had failed that led Dominic astray. In the midst of her turmoil, Harriet's pregnancy advanced, her body changing daily to accommodate the precious life within. Dr. Simone Vale, her obstetrician, had noticed Harriet's blood pressure creeping upward during checkups. "You need to reduce stress," Dr. Vale gently cautioned. "Prolonged anxiety can harm both you and the baby." Harriet nodded, trying to force a smile. She couldn't tell Dr. Vale everything, but she sensed the doctor's kind eyes could read between the lines. When Roman contacted Harriet late on a Friday night, she braced herself. "He's at La Seraphine again. Corner booth. The same woman, Natalia Chambers," Roman reported. Harriet felt a dreadful clarity wash over her. Enough was enough. A part of her yearned to remain in the comfort of ignorance. But another part, the part that remembered the four key strengths she clung to, told her she deserved the truth, no matter how agonizing. Within half an hour, she was in her car, driving through Ravenwood Falls' quiet streets. Her heart thumped violently as she recalled the time she and Dominic visited that very restaurant for their second anniversary, toasting their future with laughter and hope. Could the man who once seemed so devoted be the same man caught in a private booth with someone else? Harriet forced herself to park near the entrance and calm her trembling hands before stepping inside. The hostess at La Seraphine recognized Harriet immediately, greeting her with a nervous smile. Harriet asked to be shown to the table where her husband was dining. Unwilling to create a public spectacle, the hostess delicately guided Harriet to the back of the restaurant, explaining that Dominic had requested privacy for an important client meeting. Harriet's heart hammered as she neared a small alcove wreathed in flickering candlelight. Peering around the ornately carved partition, Harriet saw them, Dominic and Natalia seated close together, their hands almost touching. In the low romantic glow, Harriet discerned the softness in Dominic's expression, tender, almost affectionate. She remembered how he used to look at her the same way. For a moment, Harriet felt pinned in place by shock and devastation. It was one thing to suspect an affair, but quite another to witness it in stark reality. Dominic glanced up, clearly sensing another presence. Their eyes met. She saw his face drain of color, panic flashing across his features. Natalia, startled, followed Dominic's gaze and turned to look at Harriet. An uneasy hush fell over the secluded booth. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, though in truth only a few onlookers appeared to notice the tense moment unfolding in that hidden corner. For a second that stretched infinitely, no one spoke. Then Harriet stepped forward, her voice trembling with betrayal. "Dominic," she managed, struggling to keep her composure. "What exactly is going on here?" Natalia's eyes flicked between Dominic and Harriet, realization crashing over her in slow motion. "I didn't realize you were married," she began, but her voice faded at the incredulous look Harriet leveled in her direction. A single glance at Harriet's pregnant belly told Natalia that this was far from a casual misunderstanding. Dominic scrambled to stand, nearly knocking over a glass of expensive red wine. "Harriet," he said hoarsely, "you weren't supposed to be here. It's not what it looks like." In that instant, Harriet felt her emotions boiling over into sheer anger. "Don't insult me," she hissed. "You sit here, sharing intimate dinners with another woman while I'm home, pregnant with your child, and you dare say it's not what it looks like?" The tension was palpable, crackling like electricity in the air. Natalia rose to her feet, probably torn between shame and indignation. Harriet didn't bother listening to her excuses. She had no idea whether Natalia had known Dominic's marital status from the start, but Harriet's priority was her own dignity and the baby's well-being. Unable to hold back tears, Harriet felt lightheaded as Dominic took a step toward her. "Don't touch me," she spat, recoiling from his reach. The swirl of heartbreak, anger, and betrayal was too intense. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, disoriented by the lights dancing around her. For a terrifying moment, she feared she might faint right there. People at nearby tables began to crane their necks, curious about the commotion. Sensing Harriet's distress, the hostess rushed forward. Dominic caught Harriet by the arm just as her legs gave way, easing her onto a nearby chair. In a flurry of hushed voices, waitstaff brought water, and someone phoned an ambulance. Harriet's health and that of the baby suddenly overshadowing the drama that had unfolded for all to see. When Harriet regained full awareness, she found herself in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped reassuringly. Fluorescent lights glowed overhead, and the faint smell of disinfectant prickled her senses. Dr. Simone Vale stood by her side, wearing an expression that hovered between concern and relief. Dominic loomed in the background, disheveled and red-eyed, as if he hadn't slept in days. "Your blood pressure spiked, Doctor," Vale said gently, explaining that Harriet's collapse likely stemmed from shock and emotional stress. "Luckily, the baby's vitals are stable, but we need to keep you overnight for observation." Harriet nodded weakly, then turned her gaze away from Dominic. She wasn't ready to face the raw wound of his betrayal. The events at La Seraphine felt like a nightmare, but the ache in her heart reminded her it was all too real. She thought of the months she'd spent cherishing the idea of building a family with him, only to have that vision tainted by a few clandestine dinners. Dominic cleared his throat. "Harriet, please," he began, his voice cracking. "I am so sorry. I never wanted you to find out in such a horrible way. She closed her eyes, too drained to entertain his pleas. The tension in the room was thick enough to slice. Finally, Harriet mustered the courage to speak. "Just leave me alone for now," she whispered, tears clinging to her lashes. To her surprise, Dominic respected her wish. He stepped out of the room, offering her the space she had requested. For the remainder of the evening, Harriet drifted in and out of a fragile sleep, haunted by swirling images of Dominic leaning in close to Natalia. Each time she jolted awake, the baby kicked softly, a small reminder that she was not alone. That little life within her felt like a beacon of hope amid the darkness. By morning, Harriet was cleared to go home with the caution to minimize stress. She noticed Dominic waiting in the hospital corridor. He lurked near the exit, glancing anxiously at every passerby, presumably hoping for a moment to talk. Harriet's chest constricted at the sight. Though a storm of emotions raged inside her, anger, heartbreak, and disbelief, she was also aware that Dominic, for all his faults, was the father of her child. She had no idea how to reconcile the contradictions swirling in her head. Declining any conversation in the hospital's impersonal corridor, Harriet left in a taxi, not even sharing a ride with Dominic. She texted Francesca to let her know she was out and safe, but that was as much explanation as she could handle. When she arrived at Davenport Mansion, Harriet quickly realized she couldn't stay in the same room, much less the same house, with a man whose touch now felt foreign. She gathered her essential items and retreated to the guest suite. That night she locked the door, seeking sanctuary from the man who claimed to love her, but had so callously betrayed her trust. Harriet spent the following days in a haze of sorrow, meticulously piecing together every moment that had led her to this point. She wanted answers, yet her anger kept her from speaking to Dominic. Occasionally he sent messages, but she left them unopened. Francesca came by with groceries and gentle hugs, reminding Harriet that there was a world outside the walls of heartbreak. Still reeling from her discovery and the hospital scare, Harriet contemplated her next steps. She could file for separation, demand a divorce, or simply flee to a quieter part of the country where no one knew her name. Yet each time she thought of uprooting her life, she remembered the child growing inside her, a child who deserved to know its father, no matter how flawed he might be. Confusion and grief weighed her down, making it impossible to think clearly. Eventually, Harriet contacted her lawyer, a calm and astute woman named Marina Caldwell, to understand her legal rights. Marina explained how Harriet could safeguard her financial future and ensure her child's needs would be met should she decide to leave Dominic. The possibility of a court battle loomed large in Harriet's mind, and she wondered if her heart could endure such a clash. To complicate matters further, a rumor began circulating that Natalia Chambers was preparing to leak details of the affair to the gossip columns if Dominic didn't compensate her generously. Whether this rumor held any truth or not, Harriet felt a pang of dread. She imagined tabloids salivating over the scandal of a pregnant wife scorned by her millionaire husband's secret mistress. The mere thought made her physically ill. Ravenwood Falls social circles thrived on scandal, and Harriet dreaded seeing her private tragedy turned into public spectacle. Against this backdrop, Harriet finally agreed to meet Dominic in a neutral environment. They chose a high-end counseling clinic known for its work with affluent couples dealing with marital crises. The counselor, Dr. Miranda Lewis, specialized in guiding spouses through high-profile betrayals. Harriet arrived first, settling nervously into a softly lit waiting room with potted ferns and low instrumental music. She felt her heart thud as Dominic entered, looking as though he had aged a decade in the past week. Their first session was a morass of raw emotion. Harriet unleashed her pent-up anguish, recounting how she discovered the clues, how she'd confronted him at La Serafin, how the shock nearly jeopardized her pregnancy. Dominic, shoulders sagging, admitted to his failings. He spoke haltingly about how the affair began, insisting he never intended for it to escalate so horribly. "It started as a flirtation I told myself was harmless," he said, his eyes wet with tears. Then it became something I couldn't walk away from without hurting everyone. Harriet felt the sting of each word, but also the faint flicker of relief that he was finally speaking plainly. For the first time, she saw contrition, not mere shame at being caught. She made no promises. She didn't declare that she would forgive him. Instead, she laid out her bottom line. If there was any hope of moving forward, Dominic would have to cut all ties with Natalia and commit to counseling, not as a formality, but as a genuine effort to rebuild trust. Days turned to weeks, and Harriet continued to stay in the guest suite. She insisted on living separately within the mansion, focusing on her own well-being and that of her baby. Dominic, for his part, canceled business trips and insisted he was fully dedicated to therapy and transparency. He granted Harriet full access to his phone, his email, and his daily schedule, an act that felt like too little, too late, yet hinted that he might be serious about redemption. Behind the scenes, Harriet worked closely with Francesca and her lawyer to form a contingency plan. If Dominic reneged or if any new betrayal surfaced, Harriet was prepared to leave for good. The child's future was non-negotiable. As Harriet's due date loomed, an uneasy calm settled between her and Dominic. Therapy sessions revealed layers of fear, regret, and flawed coping mechanisms on Dominic's part. He confessed that the pressure to be the perfect provider had warped into an urge for escapism. Natalia was exciting, unburdened by the daily realities of marriage, yet he now realized she represented nothing but a catastrophic mistake. Harriet listened with guarded skepticism, grappling with her own swirling emotions. Love, betrayal, resentment, and an undeniable longing for stability. In one of their counseling sessions, Harriet broke down in tears. "I cannot unsee what I witnessed," she sobbed, recalling the scene at the restaurant. "I cannot forget the lies, the anguish, or how alone I felt." Dominic tried to comfort her, but Dr. Lewis gently reminded him that Harriet's pain needed space. Forgiveness, if it even arrived, would not be instantaneous. This was Harriet's raw emotional depth on display, a testament to how profoundly betrayal cuts when trust is violated. Meanwhile, Natalia Chambers seemed to fade into the background, especially after Dominic's lawyers issued a warning to cease any further contact. Rumors suggested she attempted to negotiate a settlement to keep her silence, but no formal leaks emerged. Harriet found herself oscillating between relief and a bitter sense of victory that this other woman no longer had a hold on Dominic's time. Yet the emotional scars were far from healed. Just when Harriet thought her life might settle into a predictable pattern of counseling and cautious cohabitation, a hush fell over Ravenwood Falls society. Word got out that Natalia Chambers was threatening a legal suit, claiming she had been promised business compensation in exchange for certain services. Harriet felt a new wave of nausea at the notion of her family's name being dragged into tabloid fodder. She pictured headlines blaring about the millionaire's betrayal, the pregnant wife's heartbreak, and the mistress's claims. But Dominic's legal team preempted the move, countering with potential defamation and blackmail charges if Natalia went public. Harriet steeled herself, remembering her third core strength, empowerment and resilience. She refused to let external threats from a vindictive mistress or the prying eyes of gossip mongers define her child's life. She worked with her lawyer to ensure that any mention of the unborn baby in the press would be met with a swift response. Dominic, to his credit, cooperated fully in these efforts. For once, they presented a united front, if only to shield their child from the scandal. Weeks rolled by, Harriet's belly grew, and she felt the baby's strong kicks more frequently. In fleeting moments, she even allowed Dominic to feel the gentle movements, though it was always with a measure of distance in her eyes. Therapy continued, with each session peeling back more layers of tension. Harriet found the sessions simultaneously draining and illuminating, revealing how deeply their emotional bond ran, even when tarnished. By month 8 of her pregnancy, Harriet had transitioned into a strange but workable routine. She taught a short art workshop at a local community center, focusing on the city's youth. She found solace in guiding kids who had never picked up a paintbrush before. The workshop reminded her of the unstoppable creativity and innocence inherent in new beginnings, an innocence she wished she could reclaim. The final days of her pregnancy unfolded with an undercurrent of mounting anticipation. Dominic hovered more than usual, ensuring Harriet had everything she needed. Their interactions softened, lacking the venom and distance from weeks prior. One night, Harriet found him asleep on the couch outside her guest suite, as though standing guard in case she needed help. This small, poignant image tugged at her conflicted heart. Then in the stillness before dawn, Harriet was jolted awake by a sharp pain in her abdomen. At first, she assumed it was the routine discomfort of late pregnancy, but the pains intensified rapidly. Realizing the baby was coming sooner than expected, Harriet hurried to alert Dominic. Despite every complicated feeling between them, he instantly leapt into action, driving her to the hospital while reassuring her in a trembling voice that everything would be all right. Thank you so much for joining us on this intense ride through heartbreak and hope. Remember, the final moments of our story reveal an astonishing turn of events that may change everything you thought you knew. If you're dying to know exactly how the truth unfolds, and whether forgiveness or farewell ultimately wins, make sure to catch the entire episode from start to finish. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories, each crafted to keep you on the edge of your seat. We'd love to hear your personal take on our characters' actions, so drop a comment below and share your opinions. Let us know where you tune in most often and stay connected for more riveting tales ahead.